Welcome to another episode of Ask a Therapist. Today I have a legend in our industry, for me, for sure I'll say, Robyn L. Goldberg. She is a registered dietitian nutritionist, so you're a nutritionist therapist. She is also the host of a podcast called The Eating Disorder Trap and the writer of The Eating Disorder Trap. Definitely you can purchase it online, Amazon. Is it at Barnes & Noble?
Barnes & Noble online.
So welcome,
Thank
Robyn.
you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to join you.
Thank you so much for coming. A lot of people sent some good questions. I
Great.
also got some questions for myself
Okay,
too.
looking forward to answering.
But before we start, do you want to start with saying something about yourself, how you got into this world and
Sure.
helping others?
So I've been in private practice for 28 years. I started my career at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, where I worked for 5 years in cardiology and then in gastroenterology. And during that time, I also ran an outpatient eating disorder program. I got into my profession based on my family history of heart disease, growing up, hearing about my dad's heart issues, lipid issues, and everyone hereditarily in my family has cholesterol and heart issues. So that was how I got into my profession. And yeah, I love what I do, and it's great to have a variety of people in my practice as I see kids, adults, teens with medical issues, body image issues, and eating disorders.
And how long have you been doing this? How many years has it been now?
So I've been in private practice for 28 years.
Told you guys, legend in our industry. I'm telling you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Let's go into the questions.
Sure.
So the first question is, what is an eating disorder?
An eating disorder is a psychological disease, as I would describe it, where a person is either denying themselves a food, they're restricting intentionally, or they're turning to food to soothe themselves, to suppress any kind of negative feeling. You know, there's many types of eating disorders. It could be a way that they're binging, as I was just describing, and then purging via self-induced vomiting, compulsive exercise, laxative and diuretic abuse. There's many types of eating disorders, but that's just a brief idea of what an eating disorder is.
What's the function of an eating disorder? Like with BPD, we know when we talk about self-harm, when we talk about like some of the anger outbursts, there's always a function to getting a need met, right? Is there a function specifically, or is it like broad with
I
eating
think
disorder?
it's more complex than that. I would say the function could be it's serving a purpose as a friend, a relationship. Maybe they have lacked nurturing and support and empathy in their lives, or they've lacked the ability to make decisions. You think of the world, and so many things are not within our control. So they think of like, okay, I can control what I'm eating or what I'm not eating, or how much or how little I'm moving to. So there is that piece. And or if they've gone through something traumatic in their life, it could be a way to manage the trauma and the discomfort that they have experienced in their lives.
Yeah, it really, I'll say because with borderline personality disorder, eating disorder becomes a common coping mechanism sometimes. So I have to refer out because that's not my scope of competence. We've talked about this a lot, right? It's every time we get to that point where we have to start really working on the eating disorder stuff, I have to refer them out. But it is a common theme within the BPD patients and clients that I see sometimes, where it is like a friend for them. It's like this companion when they feel out of control in life, that's the one thing they can control, their eating and their body image in a sense, or their vision.
Well, especially, we can't control what a peer says to us. If we're bullied, we can't control what color our eyes are. We can't control what our hips look like. There's something that oftentimes can lead to it. Maybe we're raised to finish everything on our plate because we don't have the means to buy more food, having like the food scarcity mentality. Or there's the, mindset of, Well, I see what a family member of mine looks like, and there's the competitiveness, whether it be with a sibling or with a parent. And there's something that drives this, and oftentimes it's coming from a traumatic place.
So I have a question because you brought up a really interesting point where we can't control what our eye color looks like. We can't control what our hip shape is, what our shape is, and all of that for men and women, right? And we hear often people talking about their perception and their look very negatively. Like, if I didn't have this, then life would be great. And this might be like I'm going to judge it a little bit a dumb question, but I just came up for me is like when we do a lot of work on ourselves, does that go into body image issues? Like we try to fix natural parts of our body because we just don't like it. Does that question make sense?
Sort of. Let me make sure I understand it. But first of all, there's never such thing as a dumb question.
Thank you.
So you were asking when we're what I call trying to spot reduce or alter a specific part of our body, is that contributing to an eating disorder? I missed part of that.
So not necessarily an eating disorder, but a body like, is that a severe body image thing that we need to consider? Because in our society, it's starting to become very common and normal.
It's very pervasive. I mean, we are in Los Angeles, you know, Hollywood, so there's such an emphasis on our appearance, our presentation, how we look, what size we wear, how curly or straight our hair is. But I think when it takes on a role of this is all I'm thinking about and I'll do whatever it takes to change it, where you think about a question I always like to ask clients is, out of waking hours, how many hours in the day are you thinking about these parts of your body? Or what you're eating or what you're not eating, or as a result of your intake, what your quote unquote movement will look like. So when it takes on that level, that becomes an issue. I mean, it's normal to not love every aspect of our body, but I think realizing too, our bodies are constantly changing. They're not meant to remain the same, especially as we age.
I love that. I say that's the thing where if it ever the body image and I wish I had a better nose, or I wish I had like broader hips, or with men it's like I wish I had the six pack. If that ever comes up in our sessions, I do always take people back to, first of all, our perception of what we see in the mirror does come from our judgments a lot of times, right? And the things that we just keep repeating. So if you keep repeating to yourself, and there's truth in like what you really look like in front of the mirror, and there's also truth to the intensity of the emotion you're creating by judging yourself, looking at yourself in front of the mirror.
But there's also dysmorphic ways of thinking.
That's very true.
Because the mirror is not always accurate. It could be based on lighting. It could be based on hormonally where we're at, especially with women, because hormones are changing at a more rapid place. So what we see is not always accurate. It can be valid how you feel and being able to recognize like your feelings are valid, but also trying to pay attention within.
Yeah.
That's always something I like to talk about.
I love that. And change is the only constant in humanity and in society. Change is constantly happening. We are constantly changing. All right, let's go on to the next question. What is the difference between choosing healthy foods and having an eating disorder?
So there's nothing wrong with wanting to choose quote unquote healthy foods, especially as we age, and knowing this is what I'm predisposed to. These are medical issues that are prevalent in my family history. But it becomes a problem when a person's not able to be flexible and adaptable in different situations where they're only going to eat from this restaurant, or it has to be made this way, or it has to be organic, or I won't eat at this place because I don't know what's in it. So when it takes on a whole mind of its own, where a person's not able to say, it's just food, that becomes a bigger issue.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to put the best fuel and nourishment in your body. I feel that way. But there's
agree.
times where it's like that's not always accessible or an option, or you might not be in the mood for it.
Right. And also, I think there are times where we are overly looking for that healthy food and overly, and this, to bring it back a little bit of what's happening even right now, this overly idea of every food has to be this perfect food, rather than looking at like it can't be perfect, but we need the nutrients. It's the nutrients that go into our body that matter. Can you speak a little bit more about the nutrients the body needs?
Yeah, so with nutrients, I always like to say, even if you're taking supplements, that is not replacing, I should say, the food you're putting in your body. So nutrients are important for, you know, our cells, our hair, our organs, our lymph system, everything in our body. So when we're having actual food, there's nothing like real food versus, oh, I have it in a supplement and I'm just having caffeine. It's like, that is not food. You might find, I'm starting to lose hair. It's thinner. It's dry. It's brittle. Yeah. In addition to, I'm not having energy. I'm always tired. I have brain fog. I'm irritable. It's hard to concentrate. My sleep patterns are dysregulated. So we need food. And over time, the way one ate or what worked for us eventually stops working.
Yeah. And it's the black and white thinking around food that's becoming more problematic. It's the all or nothing and fully healthy. I can especially say for LA, right? Because we are very like the marketing factor is as healthy and as the healthiest it is, that's like the marketing win for people here. Where a lot of times I think people are forgetting the food that we're putting in. Like when we're talking about psychology, mind, body health, like the medical health and the psychological health, they really go hand in hand in the physical health. And it's about the nutrient you're putting into your body. It's about like your body does need some carbs. It needs some red meat. It needs iron. It needs all the nutrients that are in broccoli, especially with my kids. When the other day, one of my kids, actually, funny story, was like, I've been constipated for 3 days. And I'm like, okay, it could, like in my mind, I'm like, it could be anxiety, or it could be you're not eating your vegetables and you're cheating your way out of your vegetables or your fruits. And I was like, okay, well, what's your food been like? He's like, I've been feeding the broccoli to the dog. And my mom's been getting, I'm like, okay, well, that green is going to help you poop. Like, I want you
But
to
also, in fairness, a person might not be going to the bathroom if they're not taking in enough food.
That's true.
In addition to having enough fat in their diet, that lubrication helps a person not strain, and having sufficient liquid too, so it can easily pass through.
Do that too.
So there's multiple.
I should have asked more questions. I love that. See, we learn something new every day. No matter how long you've been doing your job, you learn something new, how to do your job better every day. What causes eating disorders, and are they genetic or psychological?
Could be both. I mean, it is psychological, but there could be a genetic piece, just like could be a genetic piece if there's a history of alcoholism in one's house. Yeah. So, there's so many studies, speaking about the genetics, and also how the brain changes when a person's lacking their intake or not eating regularly, but it is a psychological disease, and it is medical.
It is a medical and psychological. With the genetics part, what I try to explain to people a lot of times with a lot of disorders as a whole, right? Because it's when we talk about psychology, it's specifically mental disorders, but disorders are all medical and psychological. What I try to explain is when we, like for right now, for example, as I'm doing things, if I start engaging in purging, we'll start with that example, and I start engaging in purging, as I'm doing that behavior each time, there are neural pathways that are being created that are creating genetical, what's the word? I don't know the medical word right now. I'm blanking out, but they're going into my genetics that if and when I have children, that behavior is going to get passed down.
It's
Now,
like the hard drive.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm adding it to the hard drive.
Yeah.
So it can be a genetical thing that I'm adding to the hard drive, or it could be a genetical thing that my previous ancestors had and I have it in me. And I might have not, like, I don't get the green color eyes, but my child's going to get that green color eye. So it's the same exact thing with every behavior we do. Anger outbursts can be genetically passed down because it goes into the hard drive. So a lot of times when people ask me, like with borderline personality disorder or schizophrenia and the diagnoses that I work with, I'm like, it's environmental, but partially it could always get passed down genetically. We can't really predict if it was genetically in your family system or not. What I can say is it's in you, and we got to work with you for sure.
But on that note, I think too, even if it's within our genetics, really trying to do the best you can from a spiritual standpoint, an emotional standpoint, just an overall overhaul, lifestyle wise. I always like to say, if I can prevent or postpone as long as possible, that's the objective, versus throwing in the towel and saying, oh, I know, I'm going to get heart disease.
That's very true, because that's the thing. The other beautiful part about the other opposite end, so it's not black and white, right? If I have it in my background and addiction is definitely in my family system, so I can speak to addiction and not engaging in addictive behaviors or not giving into those urges and just switching them at a young age and not wanting to go down that route. That's also new genetics that I'm passing down into the hard drive. So I'm changing the old genetics. So both are true.
Yeah,
it's very
definitely
true. I love that. Great. Two truths always exist. That's come from a dialectical perspective.
Yes.
I eat healthy foods and my partner judges me to be healthier. Do I have an eating disorder?
A person might not have an eating disorder, but they could have disordered eating and thinking, especially when they're being judged for the food choices they're making, and then when their partner's saying to be quote unquote healthier. I think, to elaborate, what does that actually mean to them? What is their partner looking for? But if a person is, and it's very common for, especially in Los Angeles, where there's people that have disordered eating and thinking, but they don't have full-blown eating disorders. And I think a lot of it comes from diet culture and the messages that we pick up.
Can we talk about judgment as a whole? And it could be, you can speak of it from your end, but I can definitely speak of it from an emotional end and a behavioral end. Being judged also creates more problems within your mind.
Well, it creates more trauma, because then we question and second guess the choices we make. Like, maybe I ate too much, or maybe that wasn't the right choice to order. We doubt ourselves and our decisions, and we lack the confidence and the ability to make decisions confidently. We feel like we need the reassurance from someone.
And so let's say if someone is, because I am positive someone out there, if they're watching this, they're going to ask this question. Like, if I walk into my Nana's house, my grandma's house, or I walk into my mom's house, and they'll be like, oh my God, you look like you've added a little weight. What's going on? Is everything okay? That's like a common thing that people get frustrated with, and it's a common thing that happens. What would you say to that person? Like, if I walk into my grandma's house and they're judging me, what would you say? How to navigate that situation?
Well, I wouldn't even respond, because then you're what I would call drinking the Kool-Aid. You're going down this rabbit hole. I think just with that example, I always like to say it's really inappropriate for a person to comment on anyone's body. It's your body, it's your business, and we don't know what a person's going through. They might be going through a medical condition. They might be having, hormonal shifts. That might just be their body, and they haven't been seen in so long. But it's like, a person is aware of where they're at in their body because they're living in it. They may say, my pants are fitting a bit snug, or I'm finding I'm out of breath walking up the stairs. But I think judgment really affects a person, because they're feeling like, okay, now I'm constantly being critical about what I'm eating, what I'm not eating, and they start to be more consumed with their appearance, their choices around food. So really commenting on anyone's body is problematic. And if a person does do that, I mean, I would not even respond, because then you're getting into a whole conversation.
Yeah, I agree. Judging, period, that's not going to get anybody anywhere. So, looking at another person and judging the way they look and judging it based off of your perception and your preference of what you think that person should look like and what healthy is and what unhealthy is, I would ask anyone that's watching this and anyone that sees this as a whole in our society around the world, start learning to practice non-judgmental stance. At least within yourself, it'll help, because when you judge others, you're definitely judging yourself. And that kind of habit of judging is always reciprocated backwards as well, which that's why it kind of does this transaction. And lastly, it just makes a peaceful environment and world to live in. And you never know, you might actually bring a little bit of peace in this chaotic shit show of a world. What if I feel guilty after eating? And why do I feel guilty after eating?
Society has taught us to feel guilty after eating. Sometimes we reach higher levels of fullness. Other times we're at lower levels of fullness. But I would say it's originated from somewhere. So I would even, look at and start to unpack, where did this originate from? How come I feel guilt when I'm eating? Is it eating anything? Is it certain kinds of foods? Is it certain quantities? So I would unpack on that level.
On that level, I love that. And one of the things that I try to explain to people, guilt means you've gone against your values. That's kind of why that emotion exists. And shame means you've gone against society's values. And sometimes society teaches us what our values should be. And when we feel guilty on things, or we're like, this doesn't make sense, this isn't really against my value. Like, it's not against my value to eat a bag of chips. Why do I feel guilty after eating a bag of chips? Kind of taking it back to the question that we had before the break. How many times did you get judged for eating that bag of chips before in your past? And now, is that like every time you see that bag of chips, that guilt as if you're doing something wrong? Is that what it is? And is that what's kicking in?
Well, you bring up a great example, because especially if we've been called out, it could be when we're a child, like, you're eating those chips. So therefore, anytime we have chips, we get this like panic butterfly feeling, thinking, is there something wrong with me eating the chips? I really didn't want to have the carrots, especially when it's been suggested you should have carrots, the should, instead of the chips. So I actually was just talking about this with a client the other day, and I had this on my podcast with Tom Rutledge, who's an amazing therapist in Tennessee, the should monster. If someone's shoulding you, then they're really getting into your space, and therefore you feel just kind of helpless. You feel like, well, I've lost any kind of insight in regards to what I want to eat or what I like to eat, because someone else has hijacked or dominated their views onto me, and it's been very scarring.
And the other thing I say with a lot of my clients and patients is, when someone shoulds you, it takes you out of your own instinct, of what your instinct is telling you to do. So we kind of stop learning how to listen and trust an instinct that's inside of us, because from the outside, someone's constantly said, you should or you shouldn't, which is a judgment, do X, Y, and Z, which is what I am putting onto you. So your instinct is gone, and now what I tell you becomes the thought pattern instead of the instinct. But I agree, the should monster shoulds are just something that's I don't know. Why is that word even in the English dictionary?
Well, I was going to say, what purpose does it serve? It's like as a kid being scolded, like, you shouldn't be taking another cookie out of the cookie jar. And I've never heard it used in a positive way. Perhaps it can be used, but it always seems to have negative connotation.
Yeah. And honestly, when I hear should, like if I hear my parents say, you should or you shouldn't have done this, my rebellious side comes out.
For sure.
Every single time. Okay. How do I stop obsessing over my body weight?
One thing I would say is, if you are on social media, I would take a social media break. I think there's so much toxicity on social media and a lot of fake, altered videos and photos. So that's one piece. I would really try to surround yourself around people that have positive or healthful body images, because if we're around people that are constantly talking about all the diets they're on or what they're eating or what they're not eating, or they're considering going on a GLP, it's just, we're bombarded with these conversations and messages.
Totally. I totally agree. And one thing I add is culturally, every body is shaped different, even within different regions of the world. And at least in the United States of America, we are culturally impacted with so many people from all regions of the world, right? And every region, based off of the food that they had and the sunlight and the moonlight and the nighttime and how often they're in day, just the body develops as a way of protecting or surviving in that region. And that genetically kind of it is part of our genetics. And when you live in the United States of America, someone from Sweden looks nothing like someone from Egypt. And your cultural background and what your body looks like, instead of judging it and saying, like, I have to look like that person, that their background is Irish and I'm Persian, it's not going to be the same. You can't, your genetics are not the same.
Well, especially when the comparison happens and you're comparing apples to oranges, like you've mentioned, I think genetically, culturally, regionally, and also the types of foods we grow up with. That's different too, and how food is used and celebrated and embraced throughout our different cultures.
Yeah, and food is really a cultural thing that brings people together. It's a gathering. It brings social people together. That's why we as humans are very attracted to having parties and having food and everything being there. It's really something it could be a fun thing if we don't compare and expect ourselves to do something that's so not realistic,
right?
To be someone that's not realistic. What can my loved ones do to help me with my eating disorder habits and behaviors?
Not talk about what they are eating or not eating, not talk about what they would do. I would even ask your loved one who's struggling, how can I support you? Mm-hmm. And also, I would suggest your loved one go to therapy so they can really help you from all levels, because the family, I actually have a free online course called Your Recovery Resource. It's on my website, and you can go onto my website, askaboutfood.com, and if you click on the courses window, it'll pop up and you'll type in your email, and it's a 35 module course that I developed with my colleague Becca Clegg in Atlanta over COVID. And we developed this because parents, partners, and caregivers are oftentimes the forgotten team members, and they are the most important team members. And it's really being able to work on your stuff. It's not just about the loved one, because what we say or nonverbal cues can be just as damaging.
Yeah. All of her information will be in the link below when we post this episode. So please go on that. Family members, it's very true. It's really, really helpful. One of the things to remember, it's hard to face ourselves. It's a very difficult thing to face ourselves and face some of the mistakes that we've made in the past that might have caused problems within our loved ones, ourselves, our family members. And the reality is the system plays a big role in every, specifically mental health condition. The system has a role in it. And that doesn't just mean you as a parent, as a caregiver, as a partner, as a sibling, as a child. But it does mean there are patterns in that system that we all give into that becomes a norm. And if you take a step outside and you kind of take a look at your patterns and you shift small ones, change is a constant thing. And change within me will change the person standing next to me, will change the person that I'm interacting with, because that change is it's contagious. It goes and it makes a difference. So I know a lot of family members have a hard time seeking help, and in our industry, for sure, we call it an identified patient. They like focus on one person and say that person's the problem. But even if let's even use this idea. If your loved one is struggling with mental health, that means you're sad. That means you're grieving. That means you're having a hard time. That means you don't know how to set boundaries or show love to them or try to help them. And if you're in that state, asking a therapist or a nutritionist or a social worker or a psychologist, those are the people that can actually help you. A psychiatrist only prescribes medication. There are a handful of psychiatrists that do great psychological help and prescribe medication. And if you find one, stick to it. And I know I have a list and you have a list, but mainly psychologists, social workers, licensed marriage and family therapists, nutritionists, people that have the degrees and have years of experience. They can really help you understand how to be there for your loved one, how to process the grief, how to cope with the grief, and how to create a different dynamic in your family system and hopefully help everybody in your system. We are out of time. Robyn, thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you. I always love chatting with you.
I always love chatting with you, and I'm sure we're going to get a bunch more questions, so hopefully I'll have you back and we'll do it again.
We'd love to.
So everyone check out her podcast, the Eating Disorder Trap. Please check out her book. It's a great read. I've actually read it, Eating Disorder Trap, and we'll see you guys next episode.